Taylor Decker's on my All-22 fantasy team, by the way.
Stop it. Nobody cares.
Taylor,
I don't care, and I'm in the league.
I'm just trying to hype up the future of fantasy football here. They told me we could hype it up.
Nobody cares about your fantasy team. That's one of the
It's
cardinal
my
rules
way.
of broadcasting. Regardless of the medium, they don't care.
So the strategic component to this game is through the roof.
Your predictions, right? Your forecasting in fantasy football into how good is this player.
It's gonna change the industry.
Yeah, I moved to the old town where it goes down. Look at me now. I wrote my goals down. I hold it down. Made myself proud. Say, look at me now. Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the All-22 podcast. Guys, the NFL trade deadline has passed and we saw a lot of big names get moved. So as we always say at All-22, All-22 is the closest thing you're going to get to managing a true NFL team, right? Because of that, what the NFL does will have a major impact on your team. So let's get into the nitty-gritty here and talk about how a lot of these big moves will impact your team. So I want to start with Hockenson, and everybody's going to have to forgive Bobby a little bit here because he kind of has sexy party girl voice.
Yeah.
A couple weddings, I think. But
two weddings in 6 days, dude. Been awesome.
Whew. Dude, it's wedding season. Upstate New York, for everybody that doesn't know, it's like Mecca for fall weddings, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's cool.
I
It
just want
sounds
to watch
cool.
college
Kind of
football.
sound like Barry White. It's sick.
Give us a couple notes, dude.
Yeah, maybe on a different episode of the podcast.
All right, guys. Hockenson trade. Bobby, I'm going to start with you and your sexy voice. If you have Hockenson in All-22, how does this affect you? Are you feeling good about this, or are you ripping your hair out?
So I don't want to burst anyone's bubble because on the surface it looks like hell yeah, we're gonna unchain Hockenson. He's about to go off. He's in this crazy good situation, and he is that's mostly right. But his situation before wasn't as bad as everybody thinks. Obviously the Lions are 1-6, but really if you look at their team, really wasn't that bad. The average O-line grade in Detroit, 69.6. Quarterback grade, 66.9. Their wide receiver, 68, 65. So, his surroundings weren't horrible. That's one of the better offenses in the league. But now, yeah, he is going into a better offense. So I do think that he will get better from here. So you should feel good about it. I just don't know if it's going to be world-changing. You see Hockenson go from grading in the 70s to the 90s all of a sudden. I don't think that's realistic. I do think you'll see a boost. The O-line around him, average grade 72, quarterback grade 74, and then obviously he's got Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen around him. Both players are graded really well. So I think it's a boost. I don't know. I think I want to pump the brakes on how big of a boost this is going to be for Hockenson.
So you talked about a little bit Goff, right? Goff's not a terrible quarterback this year. He's playing pretty well. But if you have Cousins, right, if you're an owner of Cousins, are you excited to have Hockenson here? Are you excited that the team has now invested in a tight end to make your offense run better, right? So if you have Cousins, is this game-changing for you, Ray? Let us know.
I don't think so. I think it helps Hockenson more than it helps Kirk. And it does help Kirk. But right now he's the 13th highest graded quarterback overall, 12th highest graded passer so far this season. So that's basically right on the fringe starting QB range for your All-22 team, right? So you're likely starting him weekly already or streaming him based on his matchup. Maybe if you also have a Derek Carr or Lamar Jackson or Trevor Lawrence or something, maybe stretching it there on that last one. But so I don't think the addition of Hockenson changes that thought process to now where if you're streaming him with a Derek Carr, for example, who might have a better matchup that week, that you then wouldn't start Carr over Kirk just because Kirk now has Hockenson in his lineup. So I think it's a small boost for Kirk Cousins, and it does help. And if you're a Kirk owner, you're happy that this move was made. But I don't think, or I wouldn't let it impact my overall thought process with the quarterback position if I have Kirk Cousins.
And, I think when Jameson Williams got drafted, I got pretty excited to see what that offense would look like with St. Brown, Williams, and Hockenson, and we're not going to get to see that He goes to the Vikings, and now he's going to line up, like Bobby, you had mentioned, a couple great weapons around him, Jefferson, Thielen. So we're going to get to see him maybe as a receiver do really well, right? He's not going to have as much pressure on him to succeed as a receiver because there's guys around him that are going to be able to do that and be the primary targets. But one thing that I looked at that kind of disappointed me was Hawkinson's run blocking grade, right? So in Detroit, he had other offensive linemen around him that should have made that job pretty easy for him, right? He has Sewell and Decker, right, as the tackles he was lining up next to, veteran guys that, succeed in the run game. So seeing Hawkinson's grade low was a bit concerning. Now looking at that, he's going to the Vikings. How does his run blocking, impact that team? And does it get better? Does it get worse? What do you guys think?
I don't think it changes anything at all. I think, it's a little surprising, right? Because Hawkinson comes from Iowa, who barely believes in the forward pass anyway. So how he hasn't been a strong run blocking tight end in the league, you would think that that's part of his arsenal, and it really isn't. So I don't think it really changes much. Irv Smith wasn't a strong run blocker either. So I don't think it really impacts, if you have Dalvin Cook, for example, or the running game as a whole for the Vikings. I don't think it has much of an impact. I think if this move has any big material impact on anybody, you look at Kevin O'Connell, right? And he doesn't have there's not much of a track record to really look at as far as his systems and philosophies as an offensive play caller. He was with the Rams in 2020 and 2021. And in 2020, Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett combined for just under 1,000 receiving yards on a team that had Cooper Kupp at wide receiver, right? Mm-hmm. And then in 2021, Everett left, but Higbee had about 560 yards, 15 games. That's okay. That's so-so. I think Hawkinson is more talented than either of those guys. But so what that tells me is that it's not that O'Connell has a distinct tight end type of offense like you think of when you think of the Patriots with Gronk and that other guy back in the day. But if he's talented enough, he will get you the ball. And I think Hawkinson is talented enough to have the opportunity to have more production than he was seeing in Detroit. And so I don't think there's going to be any real impact on run blocking either way, whether it's as a benefit to the Vikings or as some sort of boost or part of Hawkinson's game that they rely on moving forward. But I think he's going to have the opportunity to produce, and then the rest is kind of on him to make the most of it. And hopefully he does, because I like him.
You almost got real New York on us, Ray. That was play caller.
Yeah, I almost started laughing.
That was real New York. I loved it.
Yeah,
Bobby,
yeah.
You were talking about Goff, right? So
yeah.
Goff's having a pretty good year. Hawkinson has been a part of that, right? He's helped Goff. How does this impact him if you're an owner of Goff?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm I wouldn't say big. I don't want to die on that cross, but I am a Goff supporter. I do like Jared Goff. Mm-hmm. But it's no coincidence this year that Jared Goff's two best games came in the same week where Hawkinson had his two best games or two highest graded games. Statistically, might not look like Hawkinson's best games, whatever. But you see spikes in Goff's grades, and at the same 2 weeks that Hawkinson's seeing spikes in his. And I don't think that's a coincidence. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, I do think it's going to hurt Jared Goff moving forward. But then again, there's this guy coming back, coming to the active roster, Jameson Williams. So who knows, man? Maybe the Lions get a spike of some activity from Jameson Williams, but I don't know. I mean, I don't think you want to put all your eggs in that basket. At this point, it seems like the Lions are headed towards that first overall pick or top 5 pick. Let's just break it down and show you guys why Goff shouldn't be the guy, and then go draft our guys. So I don't know. I don't know what value Goff provides, moving on your depth chart from here forward, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I guess based on what you're saying, it could mean for somebody that if Goff is your starter, you might be also looking for a new next year, right? If he ends up not being the starter there in Detroit. And if you're a guy that owns a lot of Lions players, right, in general, maybe guys on the defense, just having these extra picks impact you in any way that you're thinking now, right? Like, does that change your thought process with these Lions players? How does having these extra picks change that for you?
They have four picks in the first 2 rounds at this point now because of the Rams trade back when they actually first got Goff. Honestly, I like Okudah and I like Hutchinson a lot more now. I feel like now they have all this ammo to kind of surround those guys with some more talent. So now that Detroit has this ammo, I do kind of like those 2 players a little bit more.
Okay, yeah, I think I agree with you on that. Let's move to the Broncos trade, right? So the Broncos send Bradley Chubb and a 5th-round pick to Miami in exchange for Chase Edmonds, 2023 first and a 2024 fourth. So same kind of question. Ray, I'll give this one to you. If you have Chubb, are you feeling good about this, or do you hate this move? Let me know.
If I have Chubb, I guess I like it a little more than I don't like it, right? I think when you look at that Broncos front without Chubb, they didn't have many other studs or playmakers there that could either grab some attention or make something happen or kind of make anything easier for Chubb, right? We saw Randy Gregory get hurt, so that really kind of hurt them in the pass rushing department there. And you see the Miami front there, and actually our friend over at PFF, John Macri, had a really good tweet about how Bradley Chubb had 4 total pressures that resulted in a sack for his teammates, which is like tied for 6th at his position, and which tells me that he's collapsing the edge and forcing quarterbacks to step up or out, allowing teammates to clean up. So it's not necessarily that a new situation helps Chubb per se, but rather it helps everyone to where he's now going. So it helps the guys over there in Miami and might make things a little bit easier on them and free up some space for them to operate and make some plays. More so than it actually impacts Chubb individually, because he is the guy that kind of makes things go there, the straw that stirs the drink, whatever you want to call it. He's the one that makes the impact, not necessarily the environment for him.
And okay, so now going to Miami, is there any players on that Miami defense that you're saying, this is awesome for me? My player just got a huge boost, with Chubb here. So who's that guy in Miami?
Yeah, I think it's Jalen Phillips, and so like going off of that same sort of thread that our boy Macri had for Miami's edge rushers as a whole, outside of Jalen Phillips, none of them created a single sack for their teammates this season, right? So nobody collapsed the pocket or collapsed the edge and then forced the quarterback to go elsewhere and had their teammates cleaning it up. So I think it'll help open things up to that end for Jalen Phillips. On the other side there, rushing the passer, I do think it probably tangentially helps Christian Wilkins a little bit too if he stays in there on some of those nickel packages and rushing the passer, since he is kind of an all-around guy. But I think it's just going to result in increased attention to Chubb and less attention on Phillips as he's kind of ascending into his own as a young player. And so that helps him on the opposite edge more, I think, more than anyone else on that front.
Okay, Bobby, opposite question for you. So now the Broncos losing Chubb, who does this impact negatively and positively?
Yeah, I think the negatives are probably Andrew Van Ginkel, Melvin Ingram, and Emmanuel Ogbah. Van Ginkel is a guy that, like, kind of weird. Always grades well, but really doesn't get much playing time. So even on his limited snap count, he plays pretty well. But you got to think at this point, now they bring in Chubb, they've got a pretty crowded edge room, which is a good problem to have. But at the same time, you got to think Van Ginkel's probably not a safe bet to meet his snap count minimums each week, even if he is grading well. So I do think that hurts him. Emmanuel Ogbah, pretty promising 2021 season, graded pretty well. I think it was like a high 70s grade. And now to this point, grading in the 50s. I think you're going to start to see Bradley Chubb eat into his playing time. So I don't even know if it makes sense to even roster him in any of these leagues, regardless of your league size. And then Melvin Ingram is 33 years old. I think at this point, he's probably getting phased out. I don't know how much value he's going to provide you either. Kind of like what we said about Van Ginkel. He doesn't even grade as well as Van Ginkel, but you can definitely see him start to get phased out here for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Okay. I think those are all good answers, both of you guys. I was looking at it even a little different with how it affects the defensive backs, right? So Pat Surtain kind of had a hot start to his NFL career, and I think, the less time that he has to be in coverage, the better, right? We've seen that with PFF grades. If you have good edge rushers on your team, it helps the cornerbacks, right? So Pat Surtain, I'm thinking there might be a slight negative impact on him. And then you look at a guy like Javon Holland or Xavier Howard on the Dolphins, maybe we see those guys even perform a little bit better.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And all right, Bobby, go ahead, Ray. Sorry, buddy.
I was going to say, if we're going to talk about some of the Broncos here, I think you're going to find out real quick a lot about Nick Bonito. Right now, he's really just sort of a light in the pants pass rusher.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're going to start asking him to do more to offset the loss of Chubb, who was just, a great pass rusher, but just an all-around player, really strong against the run too, I think Benito's going to get swallowed up. He's not grading that well as a whole this year. He's a young player, right? You don't expect him to be complete or anything just yet, but he might play more, but I don't think he's going to grade very well here moving forward if he's asked to take on more than he currently is in his role.
Look at that front seven too. Nobody's grading well. Nobody graded over a 66 in Denver. Honestly, man, I'm kind of staying away from Denver at this point. It's a poorly coached team. I don't know what the hell's going on there. Defense doesn't look great. I don't know. I think I'm staying away. Even if a guy like Benito does play more and he does start to see, maybe some slightly better grades. I don't know if he's like a must add. I don't know if you're going to want to spend one of your precious 53 roster spots banking on that to happen, because I think you're right. I don't think it's going to happen.
I still think they stretch as much on the planes like they need to. I just think things work out more on planes.
And that, and to that point, right, trusting the Broncos and what they're doing, it's weird. We don't normally see teams kind of quitting on the year when they don't have their own draft picks, right? Like they don't even have their own draft picks, but they do have, I think it's the 49ers first round pick, or was it? I'm trying to remember whose first that is. Doesn't matter. They have a first round pick. It's somebody else's, right? Who do you want them to draft, right? If you're a guy that owns a lot of shares of Broncos players, who are you hoping they add with that draft pick?
Can they trade it for Sean Payton so that they can actually run like an adult offense? I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot of holes on the team, but then you look at it on paper and it's like, well, if they're going to draft anything, it's not like there's huge needs on offense. The players that are there are talented. They just have to actually play better. So it would have to be on the defensive side of the ball where you look again at like the defensive front seven and it's just, okay, you're going to draft someone to replace the guy you just lost in Bradley Chubb. I don't know. It's a mess there, but I do think it's tough because you look at this team. I think if you saw them with better coaching, a better offense, putting up some points, that maybe you'd start to see where the blind spots truly are. Whereas if you look at it now and it just looks like everything is just bad and like nothing fits and the pieces just don't go together right now. And it's tough to watch. And it's almost like you don't know where to begin because you have a quarterback locked up, you have talented players, but they're just not performing well. So I don't know what you do until you have a strict philosophy that you're going to adhere to and you have some direction, which starts with the coach.
I don't know if I completely agree with you about the pieces on the offense. You kind of make it seem like everything's already there, but look at that offensive line. It's pretty damn bad. And I understand Garrett Bowles is hurt. Totally get that. Billy Turner's their right tackle right now, and I don't think Billy Turner has ever been good. I think he's had like good seasons here and there where he's like not a complete liability. But to answer your question, Chris, if like a guy like Penn State's tackle Olu Fashan is there in the draft for Denver, that's definitely a guy that I want to grab. Build up the offensive line, keep Russell Wilson upright. That's your best chance at winning. That was what drove me nuts with how Russell was handled in Seattle. They refused to build up the offensive line, and I thought kind of like the way Ray is thinking right now that Denver had that solved, and it's clear at this point that they don't.
You're going to have to trade up for Olu, just saying.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if he's going to be there for them, but a player like that, again, just
the tackle at Ohio State. What is it, Paris Johnson? There's a few guys, right?
Yeah.
I think, Bobby, to your point, I think at some point we also need to just be willing to say maybe the weapons in Denver are a little overrated, right?
Yeah.
Like Jerry Jeudy hasn't developed. Cortland Sutton, you kind of know what he is. and neither of them have shown to be elite players. I think Tim Patrick getting hurt was a huge knock on them, and the offensive line is not good. I agree with you. I think they either need to add to the offensive line or they need to add to the defensive line. I think it's got to be in the trenches, and I think that's what we end up seeing eventually. It depends on what's available. But yeah, like if I have Russell Wilson, I'm hoping it's the offensive line. If I have one of those receivers, I'm hoping it's the offensive line. But yeah, if I have Pat Surtain, maybe I want some more guys blitzing the quarterback. Let's jump now to the Roquan trade, right? So Roquan Smith gets traded from the Bears to the Ravens in exchange for linebacker A.J. Klein, a 2023 second, and a 2023 fifth rounder. So Ray, you have Roquan. You feeling good about this?
I'm honestly indifferent, right? I think the Ravens have this sort of mystique.
Time out. Bobby, is this happening again where Ray's just going to be indifferent about everything? Where he just gives no backbone, no opinion? I want to hear, we need listeners, buddy. We need a yes or a no.
Yeah, we should move Ray's tile to the middle.
I'm not Skip Bayless, all right? I'm not Skip Bayless.
Okay.
Just
all right, so you're in the
symbolic.
middle.
I'm going to put a Swiss flag over Ray's face when I edit this part of the podcast.
Again, there's this mystique about the Ravens, right? And like how their defense is this like rough, tough, like dominant unit over the years, and they make all these moves, and they're always so great, and they do, right? It seems like in the draft they always get like these great players that you're like, how the heck did they fall to these guys? And they're usually always in the playoff hunt. Like, I get it, but they're a middle of the road run defense. Like, just I think 18th overall as a team in run defense, and really the spine of their defense is still pretty weak. I do think with time it's going to get better, right? I like Travis Jones. I think he's going to have to develop there, and you're just going to have to. It's just a matter of time. You got to wait for him there in the middle before they can really nail down the first level of that defense there up front in the trenches, where then you could see the benefits of someone like Roquan Smith being added to that unit. So I don't think it changes a lot for Roquan Smith. He went from a horrible situation to one that's just okay, that you think will get better in 2023 and 2024 as they move forward. So yeah, it helps, but it's not like it's not amazing. I think if it helps anyone in particular, it's probably Patrick Queen, who grades horribly right now and is not a well-rounded player at all. But if this allows the Ravens to use Queen more freely as a blitzer and a rusher, then that's what he does best, and that'll help his grade overall if you have the stomach to start him, where he is, again, so volatile as a player. But I don't think we're going to see Roquan Smith all of a sudden start grading in the mid to high 70s on a weekly basis right off the bat.
So it's interesting. You said you named a couple guys, Patrick Queen, Travis Jones, guys that are young players, right, that hopefully get a boost from this. One thing that I found really interesting is I keep hearing, with this trade, that it actually might not be a long-term thing. Like, they might not sign him to a long-term contract. And if that happens, is it really going to help those guys at all? But really my question, Ray, is, what other players might be getting a boost from this? Is there a chance it helps Kyle Hamilton, right? Like guys like that at safety, or, just is Roquan Smith going to be the guy running this defense?
I think that's tough to expect so early. I really do. I think if it does help, it may help. And if it helps anyone, it's going to help the safeties like a Hamilton, because if he is sound there in the middle and that piece they were missing on those early downs that forced some extra third and longs, then yeah, sure. Then that allows the defensive backs just to squat a little bit and tee off on the pass and so forth. And it could help in that regard. I just don't think the impact's going to be that big. And that's why I look at this and I'm like, I don't know if that's just posturing for the upcoming contract talks because he's in the last year of his deal. Because I don't see this as something where right off the bat, things are just going to be great and you're going to see this big impact right off the bat. I think it's going to take some time. So I would like to think, and if I were to guess, a lot of that sort of language there about this being a win now move and, hey, this might not be long-term. I think that's just posturing for the contract talks that are inevitably going to happen.
I could see it both ways. I really could. So like a part of me, I love Lamar Jackson. I'm a huge Lamar fan. And we could talk about part of this conversation is how does this trade affect the players on that team? And if I have Lamar, I'm feeling good about this because I'm thinking they believe that I could win, right? So they're putting players on my team to help me get there. But I also think it could work the other way. And this is the part that kind of makes me feel crappy about the trade is like, if they really only got him for this year, is this a trial for Lamar to win, or maybe they don't end up paying Lamar, right? Like there is still that chance that they try to win this year, try to get, at least a couple playoff wins. And if that doesn't happen, just like they did with Joe Flacco, it's sorry, we're not going to pay you because you're not a quarterback that can win a Super Bowl for us.
Well, it's hard when, they just lost like Rashad Bateman for the rest of the year now, right? So he's throwing to tight ends and like Devin Duvernay. So I don't see how you go all in right now with those types of weapons on offense, or lack thereof, really, outside of Mark Andrews. I could be reading their roster wrong, and they could have a totally different opinion, which is fine. I just don't see how you look at that and say, yep, okay, time to go all in right now. I don't see it that way. I think everything's going to take time, right? Whether it's, again, just improving the weapons around Lamar, which should have happened already, or just getting the pieces on that young defense to develop and just assimilate with each other, because a lot of them are so young, especially up front. Just takes time. And it's going to need time. From where I sit and looking at this, I don't see how you can contend for a championship with the loss of Bateman and then adding a linebacker in the middle of the season. Yeah, it helps. He's talented, but that's not what's going to get you over the top.
Agreed. I think that if they do end up keeping him long-term, if they do sign him to an extension, it says a lot about that defense. I think it does have a long-term impact on guys like Kyle Hamilton, Travis Jones, right? You talked about how the core of that defense, right? Like if you go up the middle, it was weak, right? But you had a guy like Roquan to that core, and I think it's now a strength, right? And it could be a really good strength in a couple of years. Bobby, the question to you is, right, so I'm not going to ask you what guys on the Bears this impacts, because honestly, I think next year we could see a completely different team with all the draft picks they have. But more just thinking about the strategy, right? Like selling your good players. They're a team that's struggling mightily. They trade a guy that is on his contract year, and then they use kind of that second round pick to go get a receiver that still has a couple years left to kind of help out. Would you recommend a similar strategy to an All-22 team that might be struggling?
A strategy that trades away a really volatile linebacker and Roquan Smith and gets back a second and a fifth rounder? Absolutely. I think even if you say for a struggling team like the Bears, right? I think even if you're a good team.
Okay.
Honestly, in All-22, honestly, at this point, right, like I feel like if you think you have this linebacker that's like this steady Eddie, he's going to get you 65, 75 grade every week, in all likelihood you don't.
Right.
If someone thinks you do have that, go ahead, get as many picks as you can. Honestly, I was going through the waiver wire today, and how many linebackers I found that I thought I had Roquan Smith, right? And they're just there, just in wasteland, right? So yeah, if you can trade away a linebacker and get some good value, I'm always in favor of doing it. I'm a big just linebacker streamer type of guy in this game. Now you go and use that second round pick and trade for Chase Claypool. As a struggling team, don't necessarily agree with that. I was telling you before we got on here, Chris, like I think myself as a Giants fan dodged a bullet not getting Ryan Poles as a general manager. I think that was kind of a weird move, especially considering how many receivers we see come through the draft every year, right? And how quick their transition is into the league. So I think they did something really good and then backed it up by doing something not so good. So, yeah, I don't know. It's good and bad here.
Yeah, I agree with that take. I like the trade. I like the Roquan trade for the Bears. He was unhappy there anyway. It's like if you have that kind of negative energy. Yeah, if you're an All-22 team, though, I think you could get a lot better player than Chase Claypool for your second-round pick, and especially in a rookie draft, right? Maybe you're in a 12-team league. That means that you're getting a top 24 pick with that pick, so you're getting a guy that's a first-round talent with that second-round pick, so keeping those things in mind. But, Ray, we have, we want to talk all about trades today, right? All about trades, trade deadline passed in the NFL, but it's likely our users' trade deadlines are in the coming week. So exciting announcement. I want you to get the honor of doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, NFL trade deadline is gone. So now all eyes turn to the All-22 trade deadlines that are looming in your leagues. So we are excited to announce the release of a new feature of our trade block to help you make a big move and a big trade before the trade deadline actually passes in your league. So if you're a user on All-22, you can modify your trade block by heading to the trades page in your league and scrolling to the bottom of the screen. You will see a module there that says trade block, and you'll see every team there with their trade blocks with an option to modify your own. You click the button modify, and then you will proceed to select the players on your team that you wish to add to your trade block, and then type in a message of what you're looking for, right? You want to put 2 wide receivers on there. Say, I'm looking for a good safety or some defensive interior line help. And then you just save that message, and your trade block will now populate in that trade block module, which will show up on the trades page and on the league homepage as well. So all your league mates will see what you have out there on the block and what you're looking to get in return, and they can do the same, foster some conversation, and get some deals done before those trade deadlines lock in. So just from this conversation, and just basically like every podcast episode we've ever done, it sounds like Bobby's just going to put all his linebackers on the trade block anyway, because he just doesn't believe in them long term. So I guess that's one way he's using it.
I don't even believe in them short term, like no term.
Exactly. I think Bobby would run like the 5-0-6 defense if he could.
God, I would love that.
But yeah, so super exciting stuff. I know really with the way like the leagues are taking shape now, and we have the playoff picture taking shape as well. So now teams are really figuring out if they're in or out of the playoff picture and the playoff bubble. So that, that might jumpstart some more moves to be made, whether you're looking to the future, looking to gun for it now, what have you. So yeah, go ahead, check out the trade block now in your leagues. And just with a few simple clicks, you can add your players and what you're looking for in return, and it's there for everyone to see.
Very exciting stuff. I already added Jason Kelsey to mine. Hopefully a team that's trying to win needs a center, and it'll give me something for him. But just one other note that we wanted to throw in here. So we completely understand people might not have been expecting this new feature to be released, so their trade deadline may have passed. But we've changed the functionality a bit so that if you are a commissioner of a league and your trade deadline has passed, you will have the ability to. Obviously, I recommend first discussing it with your league mates to make sure that everybody's okay with this, but moving back the trade deadline so that you have a couple weeks to experience that trade block feature. So pretty exciting stuff. I think that's all we have for today. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Make sure you check your team. Playoffs coming, big stuff happening. Definitely get in there. And give us a follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at all22_PFF. And we have shirts for sale. So if you haven't yet, go check out. You could access it on our Twitter page. There's a pinned tweet for our shop. I think it's shop.all-22.com. And it's a couple t-shirts, long sleeve, short sleeve. They're pretty cool. Leave us a review. Last thing, leave us a review on our podcast network, wherever you listen. We need those reviews to get more people listening. So thank you very much. And we look forward to speaking with you again.